Welcome today to the penultimate session of the 2020 NEACT virtual conference, Caring for Yourself so you can care for your students, creating the perfect element of, oh, it's hiding the title, perfect elements to self-care during COVID-19. Our presenter today is Jessica Feedy. Dr. Jessica Feedy is an associate professor at Johnson Wales University. She teaches courses in counseling and psychology. She also has a part-time private practice working with individuals of all ages. Her research interests include strategies to motivate students, teaching study strategies, and self-care. And we're so lucky to have her. Thank you so much, Jess, for presenting.
Thank you. So as we begin today, I'm sure most of us, if we think back to last year at this time, most of us have been teaching probably for a number of years, and we would be gearing up to go back to our classrooms. We know what we usually do the first day. We know what the first week of classes is going to be like. And all of us are sitting here being like, are we even going back? When are we going back? How are we going to, what am I teaching? I feel like I've been teaching for over 10 years. I'm feeling like a first-year teacher coming out of the gate, having no idea what my classes are going to be like in the fall. So stress level from the kids I see in my private practice is really high, speaking to colleagues. And so hopefully today in my presentation, I hope to provide you with some strategies or things to think about the importance of self-care. Because now more than ever, a lot of us are working from home, work is just never stopping, and we really need to take time to take care of ourselves. And because if we can't take care of ourselves, and we're always running on empty, there's going to be nothing left when we are teaching our students. So this is just a little clip I found about Dr. Seuss. I will teach you in a room. I will teach you now on Zoom. I will teach you in your house. I will teach you with my mouse. I will teach you here or there. I will teach you because I care. So I am sure all of you are coming to a conference, are super dedicated, committed teachers. So just thinking back to why you became a teacher, most of us became teachers because we love the kids. We enjoy the expression on their faces when they finally understand a concept, which is really hard to get that same interaction when you're on Zoom. And then of course, June, July, and August. But for many of us, it's just been more time to ruminate, more time to stress out, and little time to really decompress and unplug. But it's our passion, this passion that makes us great teachers, going to conferences, learning new skills, but it's also that same passion that leads us to burnout. Okay, and many of you are probably, if you're like myself, doing course syllabi, trying to prepare different lectures and things, and I'm sort of like, I just haven't stopped all summer, and it's sort of like I'm already tired rather than going back rejuvenated. So one of the questions I have for you, and I believe Chris is going to do a poll, have you thought about self-care in the last 6 months? So in March, around March 16th, everything kind of shut down. We were put at home. And so have you thought about self-care? All right. So some people have thought about self-care, which is great, and hopefully we're going to do some chat breakout discussions, and you can share some strategies, maybe learn new strategies. But also a little more than a third of us haven't even thought about self-care. And so hopefully that number will change a little bit as we define what self-care is, as we talk about strategies to make sure you're taking care of yourself. Because the work is always going to be there. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today, even when we go back, is really out of our control. So what is self-care? So self-care is an activity that we do deliberately, intentionally, in order to take care of 3 parts of our well-being: our mental, our emotional, and our physical. And for many of us, sometimes we're the last. As we're givers, we constantly give. Being teachers, constantly give. We leave very little, a lot of times, in reserve for our mental, emotional, and physical health. So oftentimes, self-care is the first thing that goes out the window. And we know that when we do self-care, it helps our mood and it helps our anxiety level. And I can't imagine any teacher teaching right now during COVID isn't anxious, distressed, nervous, ready to pull out their hair, don't even know when I'm going to start my job, don't even know my students. So we definitely are more anxious, and even some of us depressed. So it's really key to have good relationships, and to really work through self-care so we can instill good relationships with our colleagues, with our families, and with our students. What self-care isn't is knowing what self-care is not might be even more important. So it's not something we want to force on ourselves or something we demand ourselves to do or make ourselves run a marathon if we're not into exercise and movement. We really want to find something that refuels us rather than takes from us. So we're really looking for some kind of activity, some strategies and things that will refuel us, because a lot of us run on empty and are running on empty even before the school year starts. So hopefully we'll share some ideas today because we all refuel ourselves in different ways. So as we start talking about caring for yourself so you can care for others, avoiding burnout is one reason for self-care is important. Whether you're a first-year teacher to a veteran teacher of 25 years, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to burn out. And our jobs right now with technology, figuring out the technology, answering emails 24/7, trying to prep, am I doing labs online? No, don't do labs. Is it legal logistically? Oh, now I'm being recorded. So I have to watch what I say. Who's watching me while I'm teaching? Is it a mom? Is it a dad? I didn't answer that email soon enough, or they thought I was curt on the email. So it's really important that we take care of ourselves because we can't take care of other people. And we need to find this work-life balance, which is becoming more and more challenging with many of us not even leaving our homes to do our jobs. And so back in the day when we could go to our classrooms and teach, there was a clear separation between I'm at work and I'm at home. And now we've probably all been bombarded with emails this summer, workshops, things, legal teams talking to us, watching the news, figuring out start dates. I was told one thing, it's going to happen this way. And so it's really difficult to sort of create this work-life balance. So everyone will have different activities and different things that we do for self-care. We all need it, and we all need to schedule it in our schedules, in our agendas, in our planners. How much self-care we'll talk about really depends on the person, but really kind of figuring out which activities are helpful for you, refuel you, re-energize you, and we all need to start today. So the first element of self-care is control the uncontrollable, and really recognizing that there are certain things you simply can't control right now. So even in my private practice, I often talk to kids about what can you control, what can't you control. And right now, who will be impacted by COVID? We don't know. We can't control it. Yes, there's some strategies in hand washing and face mask wearing we can do. But in the end, whether it will be me, you, a family member, I'm sure we all know colleagues or family who have been affected, waiting for tests to get back. We can't control when a test result comes back. But there are some things you can control right now. And I think right now with all this uncertainty, it makes us feel we're in control of something and figuring out those variables in our life that we can control. So we can determine how we spend our time. We can choose what we prioritize, and we can also determine and control what types of media we consume, how often we watch the media. When we're seeing a lot of research studies coming out right now in psychology about limiting the exposure to TV, to constantly watching the news, constantly hearing the updates. If you really think about it, how much changes day to day, yes, but in the end, Monday's news is old news on Wednesday. So figuring out and limiting your interaction with the news because it only stresses us out. The second element is carving out time for self-care to maintain your mental health and set boundaries. So one of the questions I have for you is, do you find it more challenging and demanding working from home? What do people think? So there's been a lot out there. Some researchers say in certain companies, people love working from home. All right, so results are showing most people, 56% find it challenging and demanding. 6%, one person says no, and a lot of people, 38% are saying it's complicated. And it's interesting because in some industries, research has found that when people work from home, especially with kids, they're actually less stressed, they don't have to commute, they're able to get more work done, they have more flexible schedules. With teachers, it's been found it's not the case. So we are more stressed, it's more complicated. We create a no list when things you know and don't like are, and you no longer want to do. It's really hard. All we do all day is create lists of things we have to do. We take 2 things off the list, 5 more things go on the list. It's really hard to turn off your computer to create boundaries. So a lot of times, a lot of us wake up, what's the first thing we do in the morning? Check the email. We check all day. We're checking emails. What do we do at night? We turn on the TV. What's in our lap? Our computers. We're checking. So I don't know about you, but it is this constant, even addiction, as we talk about addictions to our phones, it's this addiction of checking the latest email to get the latest update, and really trying to create a boundary for yourself around checking your email. So one thing I have found from working from home is the first thing I would do in the morning, make coffee, sit and check email, and then I would never get a movement break. I would be sitting there. So really saying, you know what, I'm gonna do these 3 things first for myself and just get my day started, for my family, for myself. Then I'm gonna go check the email. The emails will always be there. And really kind of even creating boundaries with your students around emails. I've had some students say to me, well, I sent you an email last night at 10 o'clock and you didn't respond till 11 o'clock the next morning. And I think, you know, they think we just sit there and we're constantly on our computers. And I think creating boundaries for our students around how long they can expect if they send us an email, what's a reasonable reply. And research has shown teaching that up front in the beginning of a course really helps students in the long run. And teachers actually got better ratings when they set boundaries around emails than when they didn't. Also recognizing and taking breaks. You would be amazed at what a 5-minute break does for you. And in schools, we get the break of the bells. The bells go off, we get a 5-minute break, kids leave our room, we're kind of getting ourselves ready for the next class, and there's this cognitive break. It's really hard to give ourselves a cognitive break when we're working from home, because the 5-minute break we have, we're doing stuff around the house, we're tending to the kids, there's something we're doing around the house, but really even just a 5-minute break, and we're going to talk about a break not to the refrigerator coming up, but just a cognitive break where we even get up, stand up, stretch, touch base with a loved one, look at photos that have meaning to us. And I think through all of this, whether we go back or don't go back, it's really important for us to stick to routines. We all do better when we have routines and structure. Our students do better when they have routines and structures, and us as adults do better when they have routines and structures. So I even think for yourself, whether you're working from home in the fall or going into your classroom when maybe your classroom won't have students, but you have to show up, or maybe you'll have 15 students on one day and 15 students on the other, whatever it may be, really kind of creating some new routines for yourself. And I even think in your classroom, whether you're Skyping with students, really setting up new classroom routines that are gonna look like nothing like last year. But even in terms of when assignments are due, routines around responding to emails, routines about how you post information to students. We are all creatures of habit. So I think establishing these classroom routines and internet routines up front is really important. Even in creating my syllabus around routines, I created etiquette around Zoom. What I expect when I'm lecturing on Zoom, I expect your camera on, I expect you to be prompt, and really teaching routines are really important. The third element to self-care is get your body moving. And so there's been a lot of research right now out, and I just did a webinar last week on physical activity, and they looked at people's physical activity since March 16th, that second, third week of March, since people were home. And what they have found is people are engaging in less physical activity now being home. And think about even too, like a disruption in our routines, no gym access, less time to exercise, more responsibilities with the kids at home, working from home. And just if you think about it, in your school, we exercise from the moment we get up, we get dressed, we go out our front door, we walk to our cars, get in our cars, we drive to work, we walk from the car to the building. And in some schools, if you're changing classrooms, you're walking all day, you're standing up, you're walking back and forth, talking to students. You walk to the cafeteria, the teacher's room, back down to the office, to the bathrooms a walk. So even in a typical day, average teachers sometimes get 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 steps without really quote unquote exercising. And now working from home, I don't know about you, but when we look at our fitness data, it hasn't moved. Maybe 700 steps and it's now like 3 o'clock because we've sat at our computer and we stared at a computer screen. So some of the things to think about is research really has shown that when we exercise and we move our body, it really helps us improve our concentration and decrease our stress and depression levels. It also allows you to focus and take care of yourself. So even some deep breathing exercises, and I've even started last year when I was told I was gonna have to teach that second half of the semester on Zoom, I would often sometimes start some of my classes with some deep breathing and some meditation, just to sort of get my classroom kind of grounded, just like I would do when I would be in class and I would sort of start a class and I would give kind of like an activity or some kind of quick starter thing to get everybody settled, engaged. So I've been trying to think about maybe something to think about and brainstorm even other ways to kind of center your students on your Zoom session. But I've taking deep breaths, really sort of thinking about how you can walk around the block, meeting a colleague, going outside, meditation. There's tons of yoga, free yoga, a bike ride, but really trying to find some form of movement that you really like to do is important. So when we look at activity trackers, researchers, so on your iPhone, if you have an iPhone, you can track your steps that way, or if you have a Fitbit. So researchers are really looking at people and try to classify individuals who have no physical activity, limited physical activity, low physical activity, people who are somewhat active, and then not active at all. And what we're really finding out, especially teachers, we're like basically sitting all day long. And any good teacher knows that we monitor our classrooms, we're up moving around, and we move by nature to meet the needs of our students. So it's really important to take time out of the day. And even when we talk about healthy eating and food, if you are stuck at home, to even get out for a 10-minute walk around your block is super important to clear your head, decompress, shut the phone off, and unplug. And there's a variety of free apps out there on demand. There's Pop Sugar Fitness, there's a fitness blender, Sweaty Betty, Peloton's offering free trials. If you're an Amazon Prime member, there's workouts, there's a Nike training club, and there's the Couch to 5K. So even if you're not really a heavy movement person and don't really like to move, one of your self-care activities may be that you take a walk 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes once a week, something to get your body moving. So the fourth element is really setting reasonable expectations for yourself. And a lot of us, when we come to conferences, we're highly motivated and we're trying to make everything perfect. And you may have heard this statement over and over again, we're in unprecedented times. And I've constantly heard that, we're in unprecedented times. But then our behavior and our actions don't sometimes match that we're in unprecedented times. And I think it's really important to realize that it's not business as usual. We have never, ever, ever been through anything close to this before. And somehow, sometimes we catch ourselves acting as things are usual. We're going to teach the same way. We know we're not going to, but we don't have any answers how, because there's nothing to look at. People have done this before, and really allowing ourselves to make mistakes and being comfortable with that. And we also need to be really setting small, realistic expectations for ourselves, even around the technology piece, where some of us are very new to technology, and just being really patient and realistic and being super flexible. And I've often told my students, we really have to have flexible bubblegum brains. Rock brains right now is not going to help. And so I do this little lesson with my students about throughout COVID, how are we going to be bubblegum brains where we're going to be really flexible and adaptive versus like rock brain where it's got to be this way, and it's got to be done this way. And even in my teaching, I sometimes have these few little quirky things, like I'm like, I like it done this way. I like the notebook, I like it labeled this way. This is due on this day. And even for me, like last year, we got a notice from our dean that we were supposed to be the most flexible as we could with students. And they were going through a lot, which I understood, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but some of the accommodations and the amount of flexibility I gave students, I never in my career have ever stretched that much, and at points feeling like uncomfortable, but finding that balance with that piece of being really flexible, but not too flexible, but yet being rigid and not that rigid. And then I sat in some faculty meetings where, you know, some faculty I felt were like way too rigid, like the exam's only open to this point and you only have this hour, and tough if their computer shuts off. And so really kind of trying to strike a balance between bubblegum brain and like rock brain in your teaching is really important. Element number 5 is communication is vital for maintaining mental health. And I think if you think about when you go into your buildings in the morning, right, how many people you will encounter within the first 5 minutes of getting out of your car. Most of us go in, we sign in the main office, we at least greet the secretary, maybe we see our building principal, assistant principal, other teachers grabbing their mail, even if they're not our best friends. Usually we say good morning. We're walking to our classroom. Think of all the students you pass in the hallways, just all the nonverbal communication. They say good morning, you say good morning. Now, if we're teaching from home, we wake up, maybe we say hi to our husband, wife, kids, what have you, our small little network, and we plop at our computers and we sit down. And so now more than ever, it is super important that we figure out ways to connect with our colleagues, our supervisors, our students, being transparent about our experiences. And I found this was really helpful last semester because I had never previously taught online. And I said to the students, we had this Blackboard ULearn site where we had to post everything. And I was very direct in an email to students, I'm gonna butcher this, I'm gonna make mistakes. If something gets there, you think I posted something, you can't find it, email me. I maybe created the folder a couple times and forgot to click the little icon that says open to view for students. So I was really transparent with my students too about we all are in this together. We all don't know what's going on. I'm new to teaching online. You're probably never taken classes online before. and really sort of creating a network of resources and support for people. And I hope your conference, you're able to network with a couple other teachers just to see, I know for myself, what are other people doing? What are people's other thoughts? Because sometimes I feel like when we're home, we're on this isolated island and we can't get out. So I also have found that regular communication with students is really important. And what they found is I taught this class on a Monday and a Wednesday, and I would always send out, whether we were meeting virtually or there was assignments due that day, consistent emails. So students could expect an email and a course announcement from me on Monday and Wednesday. And they really appreciated that. The feedback I got at the end of the term, some professors didn't communicate enough. And it was unpredictable when they were sending out announcements. And then I also received some professors were sending out too many emails, and the students were just getting bogged down with like so many emails. And they said, your 2 emails, and I would label them email week 8, number 1, email week 8, number 2, you know, and it was really concise. The emails were bulleted out for students in my communication. And then I always try to add some humor, a clip, a motivational quote, and things like that. And then always telling them to please reach out if they have any trouble. If they don't reach out, I can't help you. And I know this is a really trying time. Element number 6 is be unapologetic. We have been living in this culture since the pandemic. I'm sorry, I can't do this. We're always apologizing. I really think some of our administration and some of our, even some colleagues, like we're in a pandemic, people, like we have to bring people down. And sometimes when these expectations are put on us that are, you know, so not realistic, we end up apologizing rather than kind of grounding people and saying, you know what, I wish I could do that, but I can't do it right now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm trying to keep my head above water, but I'm doing A, B, and C. I might not be able to get to D. And really, instead of apologizing that you didn't get to D, say it's taken me a lot of work to get to A, B, and C. And so I think it's really important that we even keep each colleague in check, some of our colleagues in check, to say, yeah, that would be a great idea doing it that way. But realistically, they might just have to watch a video on it. Is it the best option? No, but it's gonna have to be. And I found myself struggling with that a lot because there were certain demonstrations I can't do. I can't hold a human brain up like I used to in class and put on the gloves and show students and pass out model brains, which was really hard for me, super hard. Instead, I'm showing a video and I'm like, that's not teaching. But instead of apologizing, it's got to be, and we're going to work with it the way it is. Element number 7, do we have another question, Chris? No, not yet. Okay. Element number 7.
Wait, Jess, is it the self-care, the open-ended question?
Oh, no, not yet. Just that one, not yet. Okay, perfect. So element 7 is creating a dedicated workspace. So I don't know about you, but I have seen people turn their bedrooms from closets to anything into their dedicated workspace. And when we look at this, it's really important that we create this healthy work balance. And I feel like sometimes when we work from home, we get up in the morning, we do our thing, we sit down, and then it's like we work, and we don't even leave the house, and we sit in the same space. And it's really important that we have a work-only space, because then I don't know about some of you, but the whole house has become a work-only space. There's books everywhere, there's materials everywhere, trying to keep it all contained to one area. And it really, not doing work on your bed, it sends mixed messages, but really sort of containing your papers. Even if you're teaching from home, getting little bins or baskets to put your work in. Some people are using their dining room tables, things, really sort of putting materials neatly away. So you're away from your work, you're away from your classroom when you're home. And this has been becoming really challenging. for people working from home. Never mind the internet band, increasing your internet band to do your job, but also to making sure, if you think about your desk at school, sometimes we have pictures of loved ones, pictures of your places to travel. I think these things are really important to have around us as we're working from home. So whatever your space is, finding a couple of those things to put around your workspace, I think is really important. Even fresh flowers, cutting fresh flowers outside, putting them in a vase where you're doing your work, but really making that workspace comfortable is really important. Just like your desk at school is comfortable for yourself, and some of us have very organized desks, some of us have very messy desks, but at the end of the day, it's our desk, and as long as we're feeling comfortable at it, that's the most important thing. So trying to create workspace for yourself that's really comfortable. I know some people have bought standing desks. Some people have been buying those big inflatable exercise balls to kind of sit on and do work and bounce a little bit. But really finding a space that's comfortable for you. And that might be more challenging for some of us, but it's really important. The next thing, element 8, is eating and drinking healthy. And so it's really important that through all of this, we maintain routines around healthy eating. And anecdotally, there's in my private practice, I've had multiple conversations with, I see a lot of children and families in my practice with people putting on significant amounts of weight during COVID. I'm not talking 2-3 pounds, I'm talking the COVID-19, I'm talking 20 pounds, I'm talking 25 pounds, even kids, because kids are exercising, right? When they go to school, they're walking the hallways, they're going outside to recess, and now they're just going from their bed to another chair. So healthy eating is really important. And sometimes we have full access when we are at home to our kitchens. Unlike school, we take our little bag lunches. We can't really eat in front of our students while we're teaching. But at home, we do a little bit of work. We have a session. We get up, and what's the first thing? I don't know about you, it's like going to the buffet line. It's the all-day buffet in my refrigerator. And it's like, I'm not even hungry, but I'm like finding something to eat. And eating foods I never ate before, like never would sit down with certain chips, cookies, and it's become the all-day buffet. And so I've really tried, when I'm working from home, I think about how I pack a lunch for work, or what my normal routine would be. So when I would be teaching, I would drink a coffee, I would eat a yogurt, and I would have a couple pieces of cheese. So that is what I am trying to do when I'm working from home, instead of the all morning breakfast. From an English muffin to it goes on, and by 12 o'clock, I've eaten breakfast, 3 breakfasts. And then for lunch, I'm trying to pack a lunch in the refrigerator as I would normally pack as if I was going to school. Really trying to have healthy things available in the refrigerator to easily grab and cut up is super important. And then drinking plenty of water throughout the day is another really important thing. And there's also been a lot of research on increased use of alcohol during COVID. A huge piece, more people are drinking your home. There's not, quote unquote, nothing else to do. And I've had to remind myself of some of the behaviors. If I was really getting up to teach in the morning, what would I do the night before? And we're going to talk about sleep. We're going to talk a little bit more about drinking, but no, I wouldn't do X, Y, and Z the night before if I was really getting up and teaching in the morning. So I'm trying to hold those same boundaries around drinking alcohol, eating, as if I was going out and teaching the normal, typical way. And I think that's really important to kind of remember and thinking about packing yourself a lunch if you're working from home. And then that's what you eat at lunchtime, and eating your normal breakfast, I think is really, really important to consider that. And then your alcohol consumption, why are you doing it? Are you just bored? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling depressed? I think it's important to explore those things. And even when you're eating, at one point I put a sign on my refrigerator, are you really hungry or bored? And before I would open it, I would have to answer that question. Are you hungry or are you bored? So that's just ways to avoid the all-day buffet. Element number 9 is a lot of research tells us when we learn something new, our bodies produce more dopamine, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that brings a lot of pleasure. So along with exercising, when we exercise, our bodies secrete serotonin and dopamine, but when we learn something new, we also secrete dopamine, which gives us pleasure. It's the pleasurable neurotransmitter. So I think it's really important sort of at this point to think about, and a lot of you have already done this because you've signed up for the conference, taking online courses, complete online trainings, use your time for continuing education courses, watching even at night. Sometimes I know we need to shut down our brains sometimes, but sometimes it gets really boring. There's nothing new I haven't seen on Netflix that came out yet, or you're thumbing through Netflix, you're thumbing through Amazon Prime, you can't find anything good to watch. So sometimes even watching a good documentary related maybe to your field might be something intriguing, a self-enrichment book, and just having lots of things around you, you know, even creating little lists of maybe TED Talks or things you want to watch, educational things on YouTube. There's also a great course by Laurie Santos out of Yale. It's one of the most popular courses at Yale, and it's free of charge. It's called The Science of Wellbeing, which is a fantastic course that you can enroll in and take. Also, too, personally, like exploring new places in your city or town, walking a new neighborhood, looking up a new recipe or something to make is really important. The number one new hobby in COVID-19 has been bird watching. So bird watching, looking up birds, plant a tree, flower, engage in something, needlepoint, crocheting, some art, mandala coloring, finding something new to get yourself excited about. And what one person might get excited about, another person may dread. But just kind of having a little COVID-19, I called it bucket list. We can still have a bucket list of things we do during COVID-19 and kind of creating that little bucket list for yourself. And some of those little things that you always wanted to try but never had time, use some of this as a way of trying it now. Element number 10, good sleep hygiene. So good sleep during COVID can be really challenging. Inadequate daily structure. So if we don't have to be at school, we sleep in a little bit. We're not exercising as much. You know, there's anxiety and stress, so I'm just gonna stay in bed because I don't wanna face the day. I'm super stressed, I'm super anxious. This increase in media consumption, our beds being used for like my new office for the day, and I sprawl out on the bed. But adequate sleep is really important, and keeping with a consistent sleep schedule, even if you are going to be working from home, or one day you're going to go into school 4 days a week, and that the other day is going to be everyone works virtually. Trying to keep the same routine and the same sleep schedule, whether you're teaching virtually or in person, is really important. Because when we don't sleep, our emotional regulation, mood, our coping, we have trouble concentrating, we're irritable, our immune functions our immune system starts to take a toll. Some strategies to help, there's the blue light blockers, there's glasses. Keep your phone out of your bedroom. We are constantly plugged in 24/7 now more than ever, because even when we would teach before, I would find myself, I would go into class for 2 hours. I wasn't on my phone. I didn't know who texted, who emailed, who called. I had 2 hours where I was constantly focused, direct attention was on my classroom and my students. And now it's like, I'm just as distracted as the students. The phone, the email, so really kind of pulling the phone out of your bedroom, using an alarm clock, really sort of shutting down 30 to 60 minutes before bed, and even maybe creating a new bedtime routine for yourself, which doesn't include checking your email up until the last minute before you go to bed. And even looking at apps to track your electronic usage, I think is really important. And so some of you, if you're feeling like you're struggling in any way with enjoying things, balancing your mood, finding time to take care of yourself, or thoughts of hurting yourself, you really need to be reaching out for help. And we're seeing an increase in people actually calling a counselor, going for psychological help more than ever now. A lot of people, even if they weren't in therapy before COVID, they are going to therapy. If they previously were in therapy, they're going back to therapy. Psychology Today is a great website to look for therapists on there, and a lot of health insurance companies are now covering telehealth with teletherapy. So before you would have to go to an office to see a counselor or psychologist, social worker, now you can do telehealth, which you don't even have to drive to an office. So for some of the children I see in my practice, some children are getting more mental health services now more than ever, because they can do it from their home and they don't have to worry about transportation. So it's just something to think about for yourself. And also too, I put some other, the crisis hotline, the National Suicide Hotline, and just some other resources there. And I think it's also important, as we talk about our own self-care, thinking a little bit about what our students are going through. And one of the big things I've heard from kids I'm seeing right now is the lack of seeing my friends at school. And for some of them, that's really hard, not seeing their friends all the time. And then for some kids, they have that one favorite teacher that they really connect with and really cares about them, and they've lost that. So I think there's giving resources to our students, and not just taking that they're not online, or they're not in my Zoom session, or they're not sending me work as they're just not doing it, but kind of even reaching out to them to see how you can support them more. All right. Chris, do we have time for?
Yeah, I think we do. We got about 15 minutes. Did you want to throw that question out at people?
Sure. Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I learned a new tool, which is Padlet from Kristen's conference opening session. And so we set up a question on that Jess had. And what are some things you have done for self-care is the question. And so the way it works is you click on that link that I just pasted in the chat, and there's a little plus symbol at the lower right. And then you can start typing in a box, and it will automatically appear. You don't have to hit save or anything. It will just automatically appear on screen.
Chris, you're gonna have to read for me.
Okay, let me share my screen if that's okay.
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share this one. There we go. All right, so can you see the screen?
I want your screen share. Let's see. Not yet, sorry.
No problem. So it looks like we have watching birds, going outside for a minute, starting keto, joining groups, working in the garden, darebee.com, walking my dog, doctor's appointments and walking 5,000 steps a day, setting boundaries, trying to work the same hours every day, distance walks with colleagues.
Perfect.
Reading mystery books.
Good things. Yeah, so all of those things are really important. Hopefully you learned some new techniques, but distant walks with colleagues I think is really important. FaceTime is super important, even FaceTiming a colleague while you walk. So I know for myself, sometimes you end up talking to colleagues and you're sitting. It's more sitting. And it's very therapeutic to convince about what's going on. But I've sometimes taken my conversations on a walk, which is really nice because you're moving and talking at the same time. I think it's important. And getting out and getting green, being in green is really important in nature. Decompresses us. So bird watching is great. Gardening is great. Taking the dogs for a walk is another really good strategy.
So I have a suggestion. Maybe we could go into breakout rooms, just maybe 2 breakout rooms. And Jess, maybe if you could go into one of them, I'll put you in one of them for a couple minutes just to answer
Sure.
questions or to do it. And then you could go into the other one. And then
Sure.
we'll close out here. Sound good?
Okay. Perfect.
All right. So how does that sound to everybody? Do that? All right. So I need to somehow stop my screen share. All right. So we're going to do 2 breakout rooms. And so I guess the prompt would be questions or what things you're doing for self-care, or just talking about self-care strategies, right?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay. Here we go. So Jess, you are going to be in breakout room 1 at the beginning, and then we'll move you to breakout room 2 after a couple minutes.
Okay.